Today, we discuss a player who we know is available via trade, who the Islanders could use, and who wouldn't really require them to break the bank to acquire. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We've got a busy show ahead, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can send us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That means hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft, and a whole lot more. Trade rumors. So make sure you stay with us for all the latest news and analysis. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We have got a sort of question out there. And, we've talked all off season and really all of last off season and all of this year that the Islanders kind of need to get younger, faster, and more skilled. I almost think I should make T-shirts that say that. But anyway, I'll just say younger, faster, and more skilled. But one player who might be able to help the Islanders do that, who we know is indeed available right now via trade, is Martin Necas. And Necas, there are some things I really like about the potential of adding him to the Islanders, and there are some things that I don't like. Let's start with what I like. 6'2", 190 pounds, got good height. Certainly, solid in that department, even if maybe, he's not the most physical player in the world. But he's not small. He's not going to get knocked off the puck so easily. Former first-round pick, 12th overall, so the pedigree is there. And let's face it, he's coming off back-to-back 20-plus goal seasons, 28 goals and 71 points in 2022-2023, 24 goals and 53 points in this past season. He is a guy who can add talent on the power play, which is fantastic because that's something the Islanders certainly do need. And he's only, guess what? He's only 25 years old, won't turn 26 until January. He is a restricted free agent. He has spent all of his career with the Carolina Hurricanes, played his first NHL game in 2017, 2018, but became a full-time NHLer at the age of 21 in 2019, 2020. So, again, it's there. Young, not happy right now in Raleigh. We know that. And hopefully he can, find a new home this offseason. He's already expressed that desire. And the question now becomes whether or not the Hurricanes want to trade him. The issue, however, is this. First thing I don't love about Necas, he's a center. And maybe he can also play the wing, but he's a natural center. And if the Islanders were to acquire him, you're probably going to need, well, you definitely need for cap purposes to make another move. But let's face it, you've got to trade one of your centers, probably JG Pageau, but maybe even trade two centers in order to free up a little cap space and some lineup space for Necas. The second thing is, the salary would probably be around $6.5 million a year, which is, again, if let's say you trade JG Pageau, and it may not be in the deal that, gets you Necas directly. You may have to make a separate trade to do that, or do a buyout of Anders Lee, for example. There are ways to free up the cap space. Again, takes a little creativity. Not sure that Lou Lamoriello would be thinking that way, but we know Carolina has a cap crunch. We know they have a lot of RFAs and UFAs, and right now they're dealing with an interim GM in Eric Tulsky. So, they just lost their GM, and again, there's this opening. Would they be willing to trade Necas in the division to a team that, is a rival of theirs that they faced in the playoffs, in the last two seasons and a few years before that? That's another if. I'm sure if all things are equal, the the Hurricanes would rather send him out of the Metropolitan Division, but you put together the right package, probably would have to be, your first round pick, one of your second round picks, and maybe you throw in Oliver Wahlstrom. Is that enough? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, whether or not Wahlstrom would entice or move the needle for Carolina at all. And again, if you get Necas, you're not getting only him. There's got to be other moves to free up cap space and to sort of redo the line combinations. And again, to me, the biggest issue with Necas may be that, if he's going to play center, you're still looking for that wing to fit in the top six. You probably need two, and that doesn't solve your need for a winger. So it's a mixed blessing. But would he make the team younger, faster, and more skilled? Absolutely. Would it be a good move long term for the New York Islanders? Absolutely. Could I see Necas playing a pretty big role on the Islanders, getting more ice time, maybe even with the Islanders? Now, he did have 17 minutes, 21 seconds average ice time this past season, but that was down 1 minute and 4 seconds per game from the previous year. He'd help you on the power play. He's, pretty clutch. He's had a good number of game-winning goals, 6 of them in 2021, 2022, 5 in 2022, 2023. He's a guy who could put up points. He's probably a better playmaker, guy who could set other people up than he is a sniper. But you know what? If you're paying $6.5 million a year and you can get 25 goals and 65 points out of him, and I'll say it this way also. Locking up Martin Necas for a 6 or 7 year deal, please, no trade clauses, Lou, but that at least makes sense rather than giving a 7-year deal to Pierre Engvall or to Scott Mayfield at the rates that Lou did. You got a guy who's 25 years old. That's the kind of guy, if you really think he fits into your team's plans, that you can offer, a long-term extension to in order to entice him to come to and stay on the island. So we'll see whether or not something like that happens. We know he's available. We know he's not happy in with the Carolina Hurricanes. And now it just takes some creativity and some motion for the Islanders to make that move. Let's see if Lou Lamoriello is even remotely capable of doing just that. All right, we've got a lot more to discuss on today's show. The Islanders lose their goalie coach. How will that affect things for Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov? We'll continue our player-by-player look at the roster with a look at defenseman Robert Bortuzzo. And then for our Islanders birthday of the day, a goalie who started a successful NHL career playing parts of 2 seasons with the Islanders in the very late 80s and very early 90s before going on to a lengthy NHL career that took him all the way to 2003, 2004. Let's see if you can guess who that is. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA final tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee. So Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time remains the view from your seat. You go on the app, and you can see a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the ticket. So you can take the guesswork out of buying NBA final tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Islanders had an announcement. Well, it wasn't made by the Islanders, but the Islanders did have a move. Mitch Korn leaving the Islanders to join the Nashville Predators. That will reunite him, obviously, with Barry Trotz, who is now the GM. Mitch Korn was the director of goaltending for the New York Islanders. He's been with the team since 2018 when Trotz arrived. And over the last 5 years, he has really been a big part of the success that the Islanders have had in goaltending, whether it's Robin Lehner or Tomas Greiss, Ilya Sorokin, Semyon Varlamov. He has really been consistent and somebody who has really helped the netminders on this team succeed. And here's the quote from Barry Trotz when the hiring was announced. "I've known and worked with Mitch for a long time, and we are happy to be welcoming back one of the great goaltending minds in the game of hockey. He has an uncanny ability to communicate the language of goaltending to his players in a way that helps them easily understand that he is trying to make them better." And, you know, Korn has been in Nashville before when Barry Trotz was there. He went to Washington when Barry Trotz went on to coach the Capitals, then was with the Islanders, and then returns now to Nashville. So clearly he's familiar with Nashville, obviously familiar with Barry Trotz. But here's the thing. The Islanders goaltending coach, Piero Greco, is still going to be with the team. And that's obviously good news for the New York Islanders. But working with goalies over the course of the offseason, you know, that's more of the thing that you get from Korn. And, look, I'm not going to worry that much in this respect. Ilya Sorokin still and Semyon Varlamov still have Greco. And obviously, your head coach is a Hall of Fame goalie, one of the best goalies of all time, Patrick Waugh. Now, I know Waugh has said, yeah, I don't want to interfere with the relationship between the goaltending coach and the goalies on a day-to-day basis, but it would be difficult for me to believe that if Ilya Sorokin asked Patrick Waugh a question about goaltending and how to approach something or how to improve something, that Waugh wouldn't be able to say something to him and give him some advice. Now, according to different sources, Lou Lamoriello was, expecting Mitch Korn back. And, he, in addition to working with the goalies on the NHL level, Korn also worked with the goalies throughout the organization, whether it's Jakub Skarek or Henrik Tikkanen. Again, that is mixed results. Tikkanen has looked good since being drafted late in the 7th round there in 2020. Skarek has not basically been much of a prospect. He struggled the last 2 years at Bridgeport. And then, of course, Tristan Lennox. He's sort of the goalie of the future. So these players will all be losing their mentor and the guy sort of overseeing everything as far as the Islanders' goaltending situation is concerned. So, again, Mitch Korn gone from the Islanders organization. Piero Greco still going to be the goalie coach. But again, I think this is a loss. And I think the problem for me, more than anything, he's very highly regarded. He's, Korn is somebody who throughout the league is respected for what he does. But to me, the fact that Lou Lamoriello would be surprised by his departure based on his history, based on everything, the way he's gone wherever Barry Trotz has gone throughout his coaching career for more than a decade now, you would think that Lamoriello would have had a lengthy conversation at some point during the offseason or after the season ended with Korn and said, hey, are you thinking of going to Nashville? We want you to stay. Maybe you give him a few extra dollars to continue at his job. But clearly, Korn wanted to be reunited with Trotz, and that's basically what's going to happen. So we'll see if the Islanders, promote Greco, look for another voice as sort of the goaltending supervisor for the organization, whether Patrick Waugh gets a little more involved in sort of a hands-on way with teaching some of the young goalies during the offseason. All of these things are possibilities. And of course, we will keep you up to date on any future changes that are made by the Islanders. And look, we still also, by the way, are unaware of, the current situation with John McClain and Doug Huda, the two assistant coaches who obviously were not hired by Patrick Waugh. And, whether or not either one or both of them will be back remains to be seen. Something else that we will obviously keep an eye on throughout the rest of this offseason. We've got more to get to on today's show. We continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders roster with Robert Bortuzzo. What kind of a season did he have? What, if any, future does he have with this team? Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders roster, and everydayers, you know, yesterday we talked about Cal Clutterbuck. We've already talked about Anders Lee, Scott Mayfield, Ilya Sorokin, Kyle Palmieri, Alexander Romanov. We started this 2.5 weeks ago. This is our third week so far of breaking down these players, and you can go back and listen to or watch any one of these segments that we've done regarding these players. Today, we're going to talk about defenseman Robert Bortuzzo. And, Bortuzzo didn't start the season on the island. The Islanders acquired him via trade when injuries hit the blue line. And Bortuzzo was able to, be effective in a limited role. He's 35 years old now, just turned 35 back in March. And in 23 games with the Islanders, who acquired him from the St. Louis Blues, he had no goals, no points, was a -2, and had 20 penalty minutes. Obviously, Bortuzzo not showing up so much on the score sheet as far as points are concerned. He did have an assist in the Islanders' only win in the playoffs this year, the 3-2 overtime win on April 27th. So at least he was able to do that. What Bortuzzo gives you is size, physicality, and a certain amount of reliable play in your own zone. At 6'4", 216, if you need to move an opposing player out from in front of your net, Robert Bortuzzo is a solid candidate to do that. He, only averaged with the Islanders 14 minutes and 19 seconds a game. He has had 10 shots on goal in 23 games with the Isles. Not exactly an offensive juggernaut, but that's not why you play him. He is a third pair defenseman, not afraid to, sacrifice his body. 48 block shots in 23 games. That's a little more than 2 block shots per game. And, when you think about it, if he's only playing 14 minutes and 19 seconds, that is not a bad amount of block shots. Also, the thing that maybe makes Robert Bortuzzo a little more valuable, he is that rare commodity, the right shot defenseman. Now, the Islanders have said, essentially, that they expect Scott Mayfield, also a right shot defenseman, to be ready to go for training camp this year. And so you have 3 right shot defensemen on the roster if Mayfield is available. Ryan Pollock, Noah Dobson, Scotty Mayfield. Again, assuming that you have that availability, the only right shot defensemen in the system right now are Aiden Fulp. You have Grant Hutton, and then Paul Ledoux, who is actually an unrestricted free agent. And all 3 of those guys really spent almost the entire season, if not the entire season, at Bridgeport. You didn't pay a lot of money, Bortuzzo. You could probably sign him for around $1 million a year if you want to bring him back. I don't think the Islanders should if they are confident in the return to health of Scott Mayfield. You could always try to pick him up if Bortuzzo is still available. I wouldn't give him more than a 1-year deal at or near the league minimum. He is a useful player, but I don't think he is necessarily, a guy you want to pay a lot or a guy you want to prioritize if you're bringing him back. I like him. I think he's solid at what he does. I do not think he will be a New York Islander next year. The odds of him being back increase if Scott Mayfield is not 100% or not healing right, or if there's some other injury in the system. We'll see what happens, but I think Bortuzzo kind of knows that it's unlikely he'll be a New York Islander in 2024, 2025. If he does return, again, he's either on the third pair defenseman or one of your black aces, your seventh or eighth defenseman who can step in when you need a right shot defenseman due to injury, slumps, or whatever the case may be. You just want to give a guy a rest. Bortuzzo is a reliable veteran who can fill that role. All right, time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day. Saturday will be the 56th birthday of former Islanders goalie Jeff Hackett, the London, Ontario native drafted by the Islanders in the second round of the 1987 draft, 34th overall. Made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 1988-89, played 13 games for them there. And then in 1990-91, played 30 games for the Islanders. Went on to play for San Jose, Chicago, Montreal, Boston, and Philadelphia before hanging up his skates after the 03-04 season. He was a goalie coach for the Avalanche for 3 years in the mid to late 2000s. Played in exactly 500 career NHL games, had a goals against average of 2.90 and a .902 save percentage. Those are respectable numbers for a guy who, came up when he came up in the late 80s and early 90s. One of his better games as an Islander, we're going to remember this one, March 23rd, 1989, at the Nassau Coliseum. Islanders hosting the Minnesota North Stars. Kari Taco, the goalie for Minnesota. Obviously, Jeff Hackett in between the pipes for the Islanders. And it was after the Islanders fall behind 1-0 on a goal by Neil Bratton. David Volek ties it in the first period. Pat LaFontaine puts the Islanders ahead in the second period. And then an empty net goal in the closing seconds by Gerald Didick gives the Islanders a 3-1 win over the Minnesota North Stars for our Islanders' birthday of the day. Jeff Hackett, 28 saves in this game, a .966 save percentage. And, for Hackett, obviously, this was his second career NHL win and a big one for an Islanders team that didn't do too poorly, that season. And he went on to a lengthy and solid NHL career. So Jeff Hackett, only an Islander for parts of 2 seasons, but went on to a great career. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll continue to bring you the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. And we will continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders when we take a look at Ryan Pollock. So make sure that you join us for that. Until then, stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. And of course, let's go Islanders.